of Arkansas holds its summer state meeting on May 18th. Delegates will have the opportunity to vote on amending the party rules, as well as the RNC delegates, as well as electing the National Committeeman and Committeewoman. State Representative Mindy McAlindon is running for National Committeewoman, and she's joining us here in the studio today. Hi, Representative.
Hi, it's good to see you.
Thank you so much for joining us here in the studio. I was thinking about it. This is the first time that you've joined us here at Conduit.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
I'm too. I really appreciate you joining us. I want to talk about your race for National Committeewoman and your role as you're on executive there at the RPA, but also, as I mentioned, you are a representative there in the House. The fiscal session just wrapped up yesterday. Give us your overall impression of the fiscal session. As I mentioned, it wrapped up yesterday. An interesting thing happened. I think a lot of people were thinking, oh, it's, just y'all are going to sine die, it's going to wrap up. But in the House, the appropriation bill for game and fish met an interesting end. It died there in the House. Talk to us about that and why that happened.
Sure. Well, fiscal session was interesting. It was my first fiscal session. I've only been a rep for about 15 months. And it was interesting to kind of see how the process of appropriations works. And so we learned a lot during that process, but game and fish appropriation was interesting. So what happened was they had a budget that was approved during the budget talks in March. And then when it came for the appropriation to be voted on in committee, they proposed an amendment. And the amendment gave the commissioner a $40,000 raise. And it passed the budget committee. So it came to the floor and it died overwhelmingly. I think it had 32 yes votes maybe. So it died pretty bad death the last day of session. And when we came back to sine die, we figured we would address it again. And there was talk of something that I hate, which is suspending the rules, but passing an amendment to pull that back and then maybe give a 2% raise to the commissioner. And instead, the speaker decided to run the bill as it was, and it died again. So there's a lot that happens out of that. But one of the reasons I voted against it both times. And the reason really is because I felt like it was a little bit deceptive, right? If they wanted to have a $40,000 raise, they should have put it in the budget because that happened in March. And so then in April, surprise, we need a raise. That's not how that works. So I felt like it was a little deceptive trying to squeeze it through, and 40,000 is a pretty significant raise. It's about a 35%, 40% increase in his salary. So no need for that. And I would approve a smaller increase in salary, right? So I think it was very good that the House kind of held their ground and said, you can't just do this at the last minute and expect us to reward bad behavior. We didn't like the behavior. We didn't approve it the first time. We still didn't approve of it. So I was very proud of the House members that stood strong and said, we're not going to be bullied around just because by a commission or by anyone because they made a decision we don't like and we're out of time. The consequences of that are that we will now have to have a special session, which I believe the governor might have been planning to call one for tax decrease or something else. So hopefully we can put that on the call and get this rectified because we do want them funded. Game and Fish does a lot of good work throughout the state, but I just think maybe this was an overreach on salary.
Do you think it caught some of those members, like you mentioned, the speaker by surprise? Because I had heard the first time that it failed that they had gone to some members, okay, let's try to do this amendment, bring it down. Absolutely not. We're going to still try to run it again yesterday. I know that they wanted to get it down 2%. Still absolutely not. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think in the past, when we've had issues where we've had appropriations we didn't want to approve, such as AETN, it will fail 3 and 4 times. And then but it finally passes, right? We always end up passing those things. And I think maybe the speaker, I'm not in his head, I don't know, you have to ask him, but my guess would be he probably thought this was kind of the same thing. Everyone made their point. Okay, now we need to pass it. And I think people said enough.
And it was really interesting to watch you, along with a lot of these freshman legislators. It reminded me of the special session and the suspension of the rules, that the voting no. And it, to me, watching as a spectator, it reminded me of that. And it caught a lot of those who'd been in the legislature for a while. It caught them by surprise. Voting no and time again, like, what is going on? Like, they're really holding the line, and this is not how it's supposed to be done.
Right. Well, I think it's kind of fun because we have such a big class. And I think if you came in with 4 or 5 members, you might have voted no, or someone might have said, that's not how we do it. And you said, oh, okay. And you went along because you didn't know. But with so many freshmen, and us talking, I mean, most of us were not happy with the way session ended. It was chaos.
Yeah.
And bad bills got through, right? And good bills died. And it just was not the way business should be done. It's not fair to the state. It's not fair to the voters to not have proper time to look at those bills. I understand sometimes there's an exception, but it's really not for what happened. And I think when we came back to special session, we all said, we're not doing that. And the irony of doing it on a FOIA bill, right?
Yeah.
Like, goodness gracious. So I think people just said no.
Okay, let's segue to state politics within the Republican Party of Arkansas. As I mentioned, you're currently the National Committeewoman. You are running unopposed again for your second term. Talk to us about this role. I don't think that it gets talked about enough. Some people don't really understand what you do in this role. So explain it to us.
I would love to. I love explaining what I do. It's a really interesting role. So basically, the Republican Party consists of what you think of when you get mad about the Republican Party did this, Republican Party did that. That group consists of 168 people. And it is 3 people from each state in each of our 6 territories, makes 168. And so it is the state chairman, the national committee man, and the national committee woman. And so that body is kind of a board of directors over the Republican Party. Our primary goals are to set the platform, which we do every 4 years, and then to elect the Republican nominee for president. Those are really the overarching principles of what we do. Beyond that, we also then want to help set directions for the states to be sure that we are registering voters, that we're getting voters out to the polls, that we are winning the House and the Senate as well, and then hopefully down ballot as well. So that is kind of the overarching purpose of what we do at the RNC. As National Committeewoman, I feel like I kind of have 2 roles. One is at the national level and one is at the state level. At the national level, my goal is to bring Arkansas's voice, right? So I take the grassroots voice and bring it up to the RNC and really fight for what we believe in. And I feel like I've done that. When Ronna was running for re-election for the 4th time, I campaigned hard for Harmeet Dillon, and I had hundreds and hundreds of emails and calls from people in Arkansas saying, please vote for Harmeet. Happy to do it. She is a great leader of the conservative movement, and I wish she'd won. She would have been great. But she is still involved and heavily involved, which is great.
Yeah.
Other things that we do at that level is doing resolutions, making sure that our voice again is being heard, making sure that we are holding Biden accountable for what's going on at the border. We hold China accountable for COVID, right? We support Israel in what they're doing. So those are the types of things that we will do. We ran a resolution that I co-sponsored against ranked choice voting. You know that I'm very vocal against ranked choice voting. I think it's very damaging, and I think it disenfranchises voters. So those are the type of things we'll do at the national level. I also was very vocal against the reckless spending that we have seen, right? And so because of that, the lady who was running for re-election for Budget Committee was a big supporter of Ronna. And I said, no, I don't know that she's going to be a bulldog on the budget, and I will. So I ran for Budget Committee, and I was fortunate to win. There were just 12 of us that sit on it. And I was super excited to be able to be one of just a few people who said no to having a line of credit.
Wow.
When we were having. So I feel like that's really my job, is to make sure that what we're grousing about in Arkansas, that I bring that to the national level.
When we were talking on the phone, when I called you to do this interview, you said, yes, I'm running unopposed, but I still feel that it is important that I'm out there campaigning, that I'm talking to these delegates about why I still want them to vote for me. Talk to me about that.
Well, I don't think you take anything for granted, right? And gosh, you hate to be just out there saying, I'm not going to campaign because no one's running against me. And I want you to know what I do. And I want you to know what I believe in. And I want you to feel like I'm doing the job you want me to do. And the only way I can do that is to be out there and be sure that I'm talking to people, which brings me kind of to my job in the state level, if I can say. So what I think my job to do is to be sure that I am going to those county committee meetings, I'm going to Reagan Day dinners, that I am a resource for people and any of the county committee members that need anything, that need, help me get a speaker for an event, or help me understand Robert's rules, or whatever it is, that I am working to do that. We had a couple of really great committee women before me, so Rita Hamilton and John L. Fulmer, and those women were road warriors. They went out and they built parties when county committees didn't exist. They went out and they built them. They were in all these county committee meetings, and I feel like they left me a very high bar. But I've been trying to continue to be out there and be part of the state.
You are an executive member of the RPA because of the role that you hold, right? So where do you see the state of our state party right now?
So overall, I would say it was strong. I do. I think that, we have strong leadership. We have a supermajority in the House and the Senate. We have all the constitutional offices. We really are pushing through probably stronger conservative legislation than I've ever seen. And that's all great news. The party needs to support that. And we do. I think we see a lot of platform issues that are getting talked about. I think there's more that we could talk about and there's more that we could do. But I think overall, the party is pretty strong. We have our issues, right? We have some division within the party. I think we have we have a spectrum, a wide spectrum of Republican within the party, and that does cause some divisions. But overall, I think that we will see in November really strong election results as well. And that is really the goal of the party.
Would you say the goal of the party is winning? What would you say the goal of the Republican Party is?
The goal of the Republican Party is to win elections, right? We go out, we register voters, we get them to the polls, and we win elections. The caveat of that would be who's winning those elections, right? And so we need to be sure that those people that we put up to run are strong platform Republicans, that they believe in our platform, and that they will vote that way. So, and I think we've seen that over the last, just with my class. Right, we see a lot stronger conservatives that have been elected into the House.
Yeah, I would say that you do have a great class. Do you see this anti-patriot movement? We see that somewhat here in Arkansas. Do you see it as a national movement among the Republican Party? And I know that you were involved in the Tea Party movement. How similar is that to what we saw the anti-Tea Party members? That was during those Obama years.
Yeah. So it's really hard. I don't like the term, anti-patriot movement. I think that what we've not done a good job is finding the areas that we agree. I think it's become more of a power struggle instead of on policy and principle. And that's what I'd love to get back to. With the Tea Party movement, we saw some similar things. We saw more of a party that was, and I was not in Arkansas at the time, so I'm speaking from a different state, but in that state, we saw it more as a people who were just happy, right? And then you had a group of people that came up in the Tea Party that said, status quo is not good enough, and let's move on. And at the time, I was chairman of a county party, and I found a way to get those two groups to work together. Let's find the common ground and build on each other's strengths, right? And we haven't found that balance yet. I hate to call them the Patriot group because I'm a patriot and I think we all are patriots. But I think it's really important that people have their voices heard and that we give each other respect on both sides. And we're not there where I'd like to be. I think we have more in common than we have different, but we right now are focusing on what we have different. And we really need to come back to the platform, stand on our platform, get behind candidates that believe in that platform and that we think will go down to Little Rock and vote on that platform. And those are two different things too. Right. So I think that, I don't know, it's a hard place to be right now. I think we have a lot of growing pains. We are seeing it across the country. We see it in our women's groups. We see it in our young Republicans groups. We see it in every state. I talk to my counterparts across the country and we do see it. And it's unfortunate because again, I think we all have very similar goals. We just may have different ways of getting there.
So what would it look like to you if you were to say, okay, here in Arkansas, these are the next, 1, 2, or 3 steps that I would love to see happen to start moving us forward to get there? What would that look like?
I'd love to have some policy discussions of, because I would hope that that's most people's goal, right? That the reason that I want to elect a Republican is because I want to enact change in policy. So I'd love to say, what are our end goals? What is it that we're fighting for to accomplish? And let's talk about that. And then let's back that up and say, who are those leaders that can carry that voice? We're going to have people who are really good at going down to the Capitol, right? And being an advocate there. We're going to have people who are just, I'd rather just send some emails. Great, I've got a job for you. And I have people who just want to put money at the problem. Well, I got a job for you too. And let's find people's strengths and build those together so that we really can enact those changes that we'd like to see.
Okay, let's move back to May 18th.
Okay.
We know that, as we mentioned, the RNC delegates, state committee man and woman, we've talked about those. And then the proposed rules changes. We saw the email from Chairman Joseph Wood. Proposed rules change number 1 has been pulled. So now we're only looking at proposed rules change number 2, which changes that vote from the majority to the 2/3. And it would make it harder for the state convention to amend the party rules or the party platform. The state convention may amend the rules or platforms by a majority vote, and that would change to 2/3. Do you support this proposed rules change? And if so, tell us why.
Sure. So I do support the rules change. And I know that's not super popular, but my reasoning is, and it has nothing to do with grassroots or not grassroots, but it really is, if we're going to make change to our rules or we're going to make change to our platform, I'd like to see more than a simple majority. Otherwise, what I do is I create factions, right? If it's 51-49, I've created two really strong factions. But if I have 2/3 of the body that's on board with this, then I think we have a really strong body and we can move forward with it. So I think for me, it isn't an issue of who's in power or not in power. It's an issue of, I really want everyone to be on board, the majority, strong majority of people to be on board with the change before we make significant changes to a platform or to rules.
So you feel as though up until this point, just having that majority rule has not been strong enough?
I don't know. I think it doesn't bring enough people into the change, right? If I'm at 50%, then I still have 50% of the people who disagree with this rules change or with this platform change. And so my thought is having the 2/3, which is what we have at state committee, which is what we have in the House to change our rules, is to say, let's make sure that the strong majority of the people want this change because our platform is what we believe. And if only 50% of the people believe it, I don't know that we should be making that change. I mean, fundamentally, I think that having changes to our platform needs to hit a higher bar than anything else we do because it is what we stand on. It is what we say we believe in. And I just don't know that a simple majority is the best way to let those changes. If it's a good change, then we need to create that coalition. We can make that change. But I think it's hard right now, and I know where you're coming from, because we do feel like there's a us versus them in the body right now. And I think that's where some of this comes from. But if it's a strong change and it's a good change, I think we can sell that to anyone. And I think we should.
How do you think do you feel as though this has been a good sell? This proposed rules change, and both of them, frankly, have been a good sell?
I don't think there's been much selling on the rules changes. I will say I was against the not recommend rule change, and having used the not recommend a couple times myself.
Yeah.
I was definitely against.
you?
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
I have. Once at the local level, once at the state level. So, so I was against that one. I feel like it does take away the ability of county committees to kind of speak.
Yeah.
What I don't like about the way some county committees have used it in the past is they've used it as a preference tool.
Yeah.
And I think it's a stronger term than that. To say
Sure.
that someone is not recommended
Right.
means that they're really not fit for the office they're
Right.
running for. But nonetheless, I still feel like counties should have a say in the candidates.
And I think that anytime that I've seen the do not recommend resolution used, such as in Izzard, when Pat Gill brought it forward, she had probably a 20-25 slide PowerPoint. She had done her research. She had pulled the votes. I don't think when I've seen it used, those committee members had really done their research and it was not done lightly.
Yeah.
And so I agree with you. I don't think it should be used often, but you know, only in those times that it needed to be done.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens with proposed rules change number 2.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's been much communication on it either way, which is unfortunate because again, it's a rules change.
It's a big deal.
And we need to talk about it, right? And we need to talk about the pros and cons of it. And I think that's how good policy gets done. And I think that's how we get past us versus them, when we just have those discussions and it gets beyond the emotional and the personality and attacking personalities. And I don't think that's the right way to handle things. So I would love to see more discussion, and I hope there's a lot of discussion on the floor before we have the rules change.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to add before we go?
You know what? I just would love to say thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity to share what the National Committeewoman does. It is, it's an exhausting job. I'm on the road a lot. It's an expensive job. It costs me probably $12,000 to $15,000 a year because nothing is paid for through the state priority or anyone else, except for my sweet husband. God bless him. But it is an incredible honor to be able to do it and to carry that voice forward. And so I am just grateful for the opportunity to do it and the opportunity to share how much I love it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, and we hope that you join us again.
Maybe.
We'll see. Good, I promise. Thanks, Mindy.
Thank you. Appreciate it.